Stars
Podcast. This is the
Let me talk to you. This is such good shit.
Starting to feel like these intros are becoming less and less interesting as time goes on. I think I need to find a way to spice things up with the opening commentary. Didn't exactly plan that out ahead of time, but I'll try and spitball some ideas in the coming podcast. Of course, this is the Five Starr Wrestling Podcast for those that are checking out for the first time. Here each week on YouTube and Rumble for some pro wrestling talk. Monday and Friday shows weekly on both platforms. If you are new to the show, please subscribe, click the bell icon to stay in touch with when our uploads go up. And as always, I highly encourage you to like the show for me and leave a comment down below to share your opinions on the topics discussed today. Typical for the Monday podcast to recap AEW Rampage and NWA Powerrr from the previous week, and we are going to get to that shortly. I'm still trying to play around with ideas for what I could possibly include to fill in the gap for the weeks where there are not weekend pay-per-view shows or indie events that I find worthwhile to check out. I know Ring of Honor's status is still a bit iffy at the moment, but I am still holding out hope that they resume some form of show formatting in the spring. Maybe that'll be something to tack on for the weekend shows if there's an off weekend without a pay-per-view to talk about. Again, still up in the air with that one, but time will tell. And again, just to let you all know, Friday's show is our weekly podcast show dedicated to AEW Dynamite and our Retro Review series, where we've currently been diving back into the archives of World Championship Wrestling from 1986 and World Class Championship Wrestling from 1983. And in the weeks where there is not an episode archived in the library, I think the idea going forward is to treat that as a retro review for a pay-per-view or event that took place on that particular date in history, wherever we line up on that Friday show. So be on the lookout for that if you come back and check out the show each week. Love to have more returning viewers each week, which is why I'm still doing this. Hopefully we've got a handful of people sticking around for the long term, because, someone's got to be honest about the state of professional wrestling today, especially when it comes to AEW. Anyway, guess we got to talk about Rampage. Speak of the devil. And you can probably already tell that it's going to be one of those recaps. I'll try to keep it moderately short because the show sucked, and I really don't want to belabor it at this point. We all know what we're getting with Rampage now. It is a slightly more upgraded version of Dark with slightly better star power, although that's still probably giving them too much credit. And I've said for weeks now that it's clear that these people are not even trying anymore. Like, God knows anyone's actually taking initiative to, I don't know, maybe do something about it. Guess not. And I think it's safe to say you know what you're in store for the evening when the company mascot gets booked for the main event of the program. And boy, will we get to that. Our opener, without entrances, I see this is going to become a problem with AEW Rampage more and more often than not. Sammy Guevara and Andrade El Idolo for the TNT title. And in fact, looking back at the show, I believe, with the exception of the main event, not a single in-ring segment on the show featured full ring introductions. Yes, the company mascot gets the full entrance, but our TNT champion, no, he doesn't get an entrance. why even bother having theme music at this point then? Seriously, if everyone's just going to get their entrances cut anyway, just cut that from the production altogether. Save yourselves some money to use for other expenses. Lord knows these fuckers are going to need it at some point. Like, the whole production and editing on this show is just pure garbage this week. And listen, I'm not trying to get off to a bad start here with this, but am I hallucinating, or is the editing on this show actually getting progressively worse as it goes along? Of course, that's bound to happen anyway when you try and cram 36 segments into 45 minutes, but what do I know? I'm just a fan that's been watching this shit for 20 plus years and never spent a day in the business in my life. So obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, what can you say about this match? God. It's like watching a Young Bucks match, man. If you just turn your brain off and quit trying to make sense of anything regarding ring psychology or storytelling, I can see why people probably liked it. If you're an only moves matter kind of fan, I can see why you liked it. Definitely not the kind of wrestling I enjoy. No one sells a goddamn thing. There's no heat. Nobody knows how to time or pace anything. And even Taz was bitching to Andrade early on about the fact that he was working way too fast and he should slow things down. And, you know, it's really frustrating, particularly with Sammy Guevara, because I really want to try and give this guy a chance to win me over, but it's so hard to get behind him when everything Guevara is one step forward, 5 steps backwards. He has a great match with Jay Lethal a few weeks ago where he actually worked something resembling a pro wrestling match, and here he is working with Andrade, and it's right back to his same old bad habits. Everything's big move, flashy dive where he barely makes contact with the fucking guy, and like I said, it's frustrating. It's kind of starting to become one of those things where with Sammy in his matches where like it's heavily dependent on the guy he's working with and not so much what he's able to take away from any experienced veteran he's had a chance to work with. And again, I talk about this all the time with AEW matches. Would you be able to name 2 or 3 memorable spots about this match in a week and a half from now? You know, I've talked about how Andrade hasn't done it for me in AEW since he showed up. And, you know, the more I think about it, I honestly might need to go back and watch some of his work in NXT to see whether or not I may have been giving the guy too much credit from the onset. I remember he had that match with Johnny Gargano at the TakeOver show. I think it might have been back in Philly in like 2018 or 2019. And I remember how much people raved about how great he was at the time. Like, I remember enjoying the match, and I also remember having a lot of good things to say about Andrade in NXT, but I don't know, man. Something about his run in AEW just hasn't clicked. And I don't know if it's chalked up to strictly bad booking or if maybe he really was just never that good to begin with. I always know he's been a shitty promo, but like, even his matches, again, it's all flashy moves and there's no substance underneath to anything he does. Granted, maybe I was willing to overlook some of that stuff previously because, you know, he's got a decent amount of size to him, but man, the more I watch him work now, I'm starting to think maybe I was right about Andrade since day one when I first saw him show up in NXT. He's just another bland guy that can do moves, and that's about it. And what do they say on Dynamite this is all building towards for the pay-per-view? Some 6-man tag or something with Sting, Darby, and Sammy versus Matt Hardy, Andrade, and one of the Private Party guys? On a pay-per-view? God, that match doesn't even sound enticing on pay-per-view. That doesn't even sound enticing for a TV match. That's going to be a complete styles clash on every level. The best part of the show is the QT Marshall hook segment on the ramp. There's only like 2 minutes of TV time, but just like I was talking about with the Andrade Sammy match not having any elements of pro wrestling to it, This segment was real pro wrestling. QT comes out for a heat promo, tries to take all the credit for why Hook is gaining success, and that has nothing to do with Taz and everything to do with the factory. Says Hook doesn't have the balls to prove QT wrong, so of course out comes Hook, gets the biggest pop on the show bar none. QT tries to send his geeks up to fight him on the ramp. Hook kills them all in a matter of seconds, and then he leaves. Meanwhile, QT's shitting his pants, and Taz is making a whole mockery of it on commentary. Great! I love this segment. It was simple, it was short, but albeit it was probably the most effective thing they did on the entire show. I'm still not in a rush to see them fast-track Hook to a major feud in the coming weeks, but I think I've talked about it before. A QT program is not bad in the interim. Hook can beat all the factory dorks and rack up some quick wins. Maybe QT's the end game, and if that's something they want to blow off of the pay-per-view in a short, quick squash, I'd be down for it. Just have Hook go in there, tap him out in 30 seconds, and that's wrap. Doesn't need to be overly convoluted. Like, everything they've done with Hook so far has been damn near perfect. Which is probably an omen that they'll find a way to screw it up once they book him in a match with Orange Cassidy. Following that, we got word that Scorpio Sky is getting a chance to qualify for the ladder match at the pay-per-view. Scorpio still has a contract, huh? Talk about dudes that you totally forgot existed on this show. Wardlow versus Nick Comoroto was an entertaining big guy squash for, the 2 fucking minutes we actually got to see it without airing during a commercial. Fucking morons. I still would like to see them actually do something with Comoroto. The dude has a unique look, and he has some ability. The Powerbomb Symphony at the end was pretty sketchy. You could tell Wardlow was starting to get pretty tired there, trying to do the successive power bombs at Comoroto, and that last one, whew, he barely got him up in the air for that. The stuff with him and Shawn Spears afterwards was wacky. Like, Spears telling him that the Powerbomb Symphony isn't getting over, so he needs to stop. All right, then. I guess it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. I will say, and I think I've touched on this before about Spears, the goofball comedy accountability buddy version of Spears is so much more believable than the super stern, super serious chairman version of Shawn Spears. And when that payoff comes where Wardlow finally smashes him and leaves him for dead, you can already tell that's going to get a mega pop. Whether that stems from Spears costing Wardlow the ladder match at the pay-per-view or accosting him for using the powerbomb in future TV matches. Like I said, it's definitely something I'm looking forward to. Had another 5-minute Serena Deeb challenge, which don't have a whole lot to note about. Again, not really sure what the end game is with the whole thing, but I like watching Serena's matches. She's a great heel, and, whether it's building to Sheeta's return or, maybe someone like Mia Yim or an Ember Moon coming down the pike, it's got my attention, temporarily. The Britt Baker Thunderosa contract signing was predictably WWE light in every way imaginable. The promo that Britt cut was really good, and I'm still looking forward to that match at the pay-per-view, but did anyone really expect this segment to go any other way than it did? Even when Rosa jumped Britt over the table, no one reacted to that. It was like, oh, look at that. Rosa jumped Britt. Who didn't see that coming? Show of hands. Of course, that led to the brawl with Britt's crew. Eventually, Mercedes Martinez got involved there at the end. Tony Schiavone, of course, comically standing there in the background while it's all going down. Absolutely no concern for his well-being or safety. Probably just thinking to himself, well, it's just girls. What could they possibly do to me? And he's probably not wrong. By the way, did anyone catch the awkward audio cut-in of Excalibur as soon as Mercedes put Jamie Hayter through the table? The most intense part of the entire segment, the climax of the segment, And they chose that moment to dub in post-audio commentary. And God, did it sound Bush League. Speaking of Bush League, what better way to close out a Bush League program than with the company mascot in a garbage indie match? And, well, since I already know Cornette probably skipped over the whole segment after the rap intro before the opening bell, allow for me to provide some in-depth analyses of the so-called wrestling we got in this match. It sucked. I wrote this down here as a side note. You know, I keep hearing a lot of people rave about how great Bowens and Caster are. And I think I've talked about how if Caster can stay out of trouble and they take their work seriously, they could probably be a good, solid undercard team in AEW. I don't know, man. The more I see of them, the more I'm starting to withdraw from that entire statement. To me, they just come across as another knockoff of Private Party or, what were their names in NXT? Dawkins and Ford. The Street Profits. Like, and before y'all go dropping the race card in there, oh, of course he's going to say that because they're black. Okay, well, let's analyze it then. Aside from the rap gimmick with the Acclaimed, is there really that much of a difference between the way those teams are featured on TV? Like I've said before, Bowens has a good look, but I don't know, man. I just don't see main event or upper card level tag team with those guys. And maybe that's not the end goal for them, and that's fine. You know, they have a lot of personality and charisma, but like every time I watch them on TV, everything about them just screams green. And it really shows when I watch their matches. Now, to defend Bowens a little bit here, he didn't have exactly a lot to work with by having to wrestle an indie clown like Orange Cassidy. It's exactly what I talked about with the Sammy Guevara thing in the opener. Bowens needs to be working with experienced vets that can help carry him in the ring and teach him ring psychology, to teach him pacing, to teach him facials, to teach him timing. Like, FTR and Red Dragon would be perfect tag teams for him and Caster to work a program with. Or in singles competition, Bowens working with a Dustin Rhodes or a Punk or a Danielson. Guys that know what they're doing. What the fuck is Bowens going to get out of wrestling Orange fucking Cassidy? Aside from a bunch of sloppiness and bad wrestling. Of course, Tony Khan can't help himself with his insalubrious infatuation with Orange fucking Cassidy. Gotta give the douchebag a pay-per-view payout. And I mean, we all know where that's gonna go. He's just gonna drag that ladder match down by association, do a bunch of stupid comedy spots, and when people wonder 10 years from now why AEW failed as a company, all they'll need to do is look back at the casino ladder match from the 2022 Revolution pay-per-view. And no, that's another thing, too, about the Acclaim that makes it so hard to get behind them. And really a problem that I've kind of talked about with a lot of young guys in AEW. Like, they never win. When they do, it's either because of superfluous interference or other nefarious garbage. Then the problem is when they do jobs to other teams, like Sting and Darby Allin, for example, they either fall off the map for several weeks and then randomly show back up again, or you know, it's right back to square one with them. There's no card progression. There's no elevation. There's no advancement. Like I said, you can attribute that to a problem of AEW's talent pool. You know, I've talked about the stop and start booking mentality of Tony Khan, where anytime someone has the potential to even catch a little bit of fire or a little bit of traction, they either get pulled from TV or he does a job and he's completely forgotten about after the fact. And most of that's because they got way too many people under contract, and I mean, they're never going to be able to have enough time to feature anyone effectively. But, you know, I've seen enough to claim matches now where it's starting to feel like an endless, repetitive cycle of them going nowhere as a duo. Like, at some point, these guys are either going to have to get some kind of meaningful, defining win. Otherwise, what's the point of even keeping them around? Bowen's doing a job that Cassidy in the main event here ain't doing him any favors. You know, not that Rampage in general is doing anyone any favors. Aside from that 2-minute hook segment, the other 40 minutes of the show is just a whole lot of nothing. Again, if you're into the whole no logic, everyone do a bunch of pointless flips and moves kind of wrestling, I'm sure everyone enjoyed the opener, but amid the shitty main event, the WWE light contract segment with the girls, and the Wardlow squash where 90% of it happened during a commercial, I mean, you wonder why I keep suggesting they've clearly given up with this show. You're telling me this was something the Booker of the Year, Tony Khan, came up with when he constructed a card for this wrestling program? This was his first or even second idea for a card? Like, okay, I get every show's not going to be a home run, but come on, man. You give me 10 minutes. I could have come up with a better Rampage card. Just give me a pencil and paper and give me a little bit of free time in a room. I could have come up with something better without even really having to put much forethought into it. And now that I know the company mascot is going to be partaking in chicanery in the latter match of the pay-per-view, I have completely lost all hope that that match will be any good. Not that I was expecting it to be good anyway when 60% of the guys in it are a bunch of big jacked up dudes that really shouldn't even be in ladder matches to begin with. So moving along here, let's talk about NWA Powerrr from February 22nd, 2022. And I am trying to keep track of the seasons now, since that's apparently how they're archived on most of the sites now. This is apparently Season 7, Episode 9. And this was also Part 1 of the Powerrrtrip tapings. And they are filming the next several shows from the Valor Hall in Oak Grove, Kentucky, which I believe is right along the southern border next to Tennessee. And it seemed like they had good attendance, too. Hopefully all the COVID restrictions are lifted by now, which, knowing Kentucky, I have to assume that they've probably had those restrictions lifted for quite a while now. And good on them. All those garbage mandates never made any sense anyway. And again, I am vaguely aware of the key spoilers for the upcoming title changes. Tried my best to avoid them like the plague, but and again, you spend enough time consuming wrestling content, evidently things are going to randomly start to show up in your news feed. And they really did not even try to conceal the world title change in any way. So I'm assuming that match will air in the next couple weeks. Most of this show was just prelim material, but man, that 2 out of 3 falls match ended up being a hell of a little TV match. So if anything, the show ended up being worthwhile in the end. Even with the main event featuring Turn the Channel, Get the Fuck Off My TV Heat, Taryn Terrell. But we begin with Jax Dane in the ring to do a promo with Joe Galli, informing us that it was in this very building that he, and I quote, killed Crimson a few months ago. Yes, killed. Not put on the shelf, but permanently deleted from humanity. Normally I would be taken aback by such drastic statements, but now, to be fair, I did just watch an episode of World Championship Wrestling from 1986 where the studio audience was passionately chanting for wrestlers to maim and murder one another on live television. Aside from that, though, there wasn't a whole lot to the promo. He did do a post-match interview after his match with Kyle Davis regarding his hired lawyer and the restraining order that he still has out on Crimson. And the match was Jax Dane completely obliterating some geek named Eric Jackson in about a minute. It was fun. And apparently Dane has been watching some old Bradshaw tapes from back in the day, trying to master and perfect the clothesline from hell. No one does it better than Bradshaw, but I was pretty impressed with his clothesline in this match. Up next was Chelsea Green versus Kenzie Page. And apparently they've already dropped the zombie bride gimmick with Chelsea Green already. Thank Christ. I kind of laughed when Velvet brought up the fact that Kenzie's first bump came at the age of 13. What, she take a hip toss on a trampoline or something? First bump. Remember when people used to actually go out of their way to protect the business? You know, a lot of people have raved about Chelsea Green before, talked about how WWE really missed the boat with her. I've watched a lot of Chelsea's work before. I saw the stuff she did in Impact years back, including the whole deranged zombie bride thing, which was just bad. I don't know, man. I never really thought she was all that special. Granted, her affiliation with Matt Cardona has kind of knocked her down a couple more pegs in my book, but I never really thought she was all that good. She's really jerky in her matches. Her punches don't look good. Her basics are meh. She's got some personality, I'll give her that, but watching her wrestle, I've just never been all that sold on her. The match wasn't horrendous or anything, but Kenzie's really green, and Chelsea's, well, pretty green herself, if we're being frank. At least she picked a fitting last name. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't get a whole lot out of this match. Like I said, it wasn't embarrassingly bad or anything, just kind of comparable to most women's matches I see today. Very choppy, very spot-oriented, transitions aren't really smooth, clear parts in the match where you can tell they're trying to remember spots and being overly cooperative with one another. I'll still give NWA credit where it's due, though. They are a lot better at scouting female talent than AEW. Not that I'm ever really blown away with NWA women's matches, but I can at least watch a women's match on this show without cringing every time a girl tries a sloppy-looking dive or completely fucks up an offensive move. Like, at least most of the women on this show know their skill level and are smart enough not to do a bunch of awkward-looking shit that they obviously know they're not going to be able to pull off. Then we had the Colby Caruso Red Titus 2 out of 3 falls match. Was not sure what necessitated the 2 out of 3 falls, but if I had any idea beforehand that they were going to end up going balls to the walls like they did in this match, I probably would have advocated for best 4 out of 5. Or better yet, just give them the whole damn show to work. This match was fantastic, though, man. I really mean that. I'm not ribbing. I didn't know what to expect going in, but these guys worked their asses off in this match. I've credited Colby on this show before, but I don't think I've ever put over Rhett Titus and how impressed I've been with him lately. Like, I used to watch his stuff with Kenny King and Ring of Honor years ago, and looking back, it's a shame that I don't think I ever gave Rhett the appreciation that I gave Kenny back in the day. I think the problem was that, you know, Kenny King was clearly the guy that had more star potential than Rhett did in that duo. I naturally gravitated, you know, toward a sort of immediate dismissal of Rhett because I always saw more in Kenny as an overall package. But I watched some of Rhett's recent work, and, you know, I know he had that really good match with Austin Aries late last year. He's got a lot of strong upside as a talent. He has a great body, great basics. He's fluid with everything he does in the ring. His selling is on point. You know, he probably doesn't have the flashiest personality in the ring, but there's definitely something there. I love Colby working over Rhett's back early on and that kind of being the focal point of the targeting of the body part throughout the match. They did do a lot of near falls and false finishes, but what I really liked about what they did is that each near fall actually felt like it was building to something throughout the match. Like, the whole story was Rhett favoring the back injury, and while Colby kept going for the flash pins and roll-ups, Rhett would either keep kicking out or he'd get close enough to the ropes to break the hold, and Colby would keep selling the frustration with each one. And, you know, I appreciated, too, that they didn't go overboard with the WWE oversell of the false finish where they have to make the whole mouth agape, bug-eyed look where the wrestlers just look like they saw the second incarnation of Jesus Christ in the ring. And, you know, they did end up going the full distance with the 3 falls, but I like that both of Colby's falls came at the expense of using heel tactics to do it. Rhett wound up getting the first pin, but Colby tied it with using the ropes, And then he ended up getting the decisive fall at the end by using the groin shot. And that finish was fucking awesome. Colby grabbing the tag rope in the corner and getting the low blow on Rhett while the ref was trying to pry him off the rope. Of course, I'm supposed to be pissed that Colby won that way, but man, as soon as I saw him get that low blow shot in, I just went fucking nice. It is very refreshing when heels actually win matches by being dirtbags. And I really dig Colby's stuff, man. He still looks like someone put a 2010 version of Austin Aries in the dryer for too long, but he's a real solid worker. I highly recommend this match for people to check out if they get a little bit of free time. This is a pleasant surprise on the show. Really didn't expect this to be as good as it ended up being, but both guys worked really hard in this match, and they had a great old school, fairly lengthy TV match. But like I said, it didn't bog, it didn't sag at any point. It felt like it was actually building to a climax at the end, and right at that peak point where they should have taken the match home, boom, they executed on it. So, hats off to these guys here. This is some really strong work. Unfortunately, they completely took the piss out of that match with Kyle Davis interviewing Taryn Terrell. Not that her promo had anything of substance, but I did have to hear her squeal the line, "Bye!" And, yeah, that shattered a few eardrums worldwide. And normally, I go out of my way to boycott Taryn Terrell matches on the show after that completely preposterous social distance abortion that they subjected me to at some point late last year. However, I like Camille. I figured I'd get some mild entertainment out of watching her beat the shit out of Taryn here, so I willingly gave Taryn another chance to redeem herself. Spoiler alert, she didn't. But she was a decent enough punching bag where she made it worthwhile. And here's what I'll say. If this match was supposed to be heel versus heel going in, Camille was not a heel after this match. At least not in my book. Still would have preferred the one-sided beatdown from bell to bell without having to see Camille Cell, which, let's be honest, she's still not really good at. The match was not atrocious or anything, but God, Taryn is just, I don't even know how to describe it. I think the best way to sum it up is that she's trying to do WWE stuff on what's supposed to be treated like an old school professional wrestling show. And granted, I understand most of it's probably not her fault and it's the gimmick she's being saddled with. Regardless, it's not something I want to see on NWA TV. They want to do this trashy character stuff on NXT. It would fit perfectly with all the cartoon characters they've got stinking up the joint right now on that show. But Taryn doing the prissy Barbie doll gimmick on NWA is just, again, turn the channel level of heat. The water bottle gimmick thing is stupid, and above all else, the reason her character is so cringe is that when she does this stupid shit like she did in this match where she's crawling over to the corner to grab her water bottle, she completely stops selling and everything she does after the fact looks completely fake. And like I talked about a minute ago, Camille is not at the point in her development right now where she needs to be doing long periods of selling. Taryn would have been the perfect opponent for Camille to just go in there, muscle and ragdoll around for a little bit, squash her like a bug in a minute and a half, and be done with it. I'm not even going to ask what Taryn did to earn a title shot in this match to begin with. I think we're long past the point of that making any rational sense. But it was painless enough. But anyone that's going to try and tell me that this should have main evented over that Carino Titus 2 out of 3 falls match is a fucking moron. If anything, I'll say this about the show. It is worth going out of your way to check out for that men's match alone. You could skip all the girl stuff and not lose sleep over it, but for sure, go out of your way to watch that 2 out of 3 falls match. And again, I know we're going to be getting more of the matches that are taping with the Powerrrtrip shows in the coming weeks, so generally I actually am looking forward to more of these upcoming shows, and seeing what kind of higher quality matches we get than normal. Next Monday's show, I know will be more jam-packed with the Revolution recap, but for today, that'll wrap things up with Dynamite and Powerrr reports. Again, subscribe, comment, and like the show if you don't mind. We will be back this coming Friday for the Dynamite Go Home report in the continuation of our retro review series. And like I talked about at the beginning of the program, I'll keep juggling ideas around for maybe trying to find a third filler segment for the Monday podcast if there's not a weekend pay-per-view to talk about. I know there are small indie events here and there, but I'm trying to look for something quality. And no offense to a lot of the independent outlets out there, but they ain't offering much in terms of quality content. I'd love to see more of whatever that promotion that Jonathan Gresham started up recently. And I know Braun Strowman and EC3 started up a little project of their own. Apparently one of their events is happening this coming Friday, but I'm not going to be able to pack that in for the Monday show. There's just too much going on next weekend with the AEW pay-per-view. Maybe I'll put that one on the back burner for the following week and give it a shot, see if I can find a good stream of it. GCW is a nice one-stop into mud show territory, but I think Strowman and EC3 are smart enough to make sure they do away with the broken glass, light tubes, and shooting fireworks up other people's assholes. Or maybe not. Guess we'll see if it turns into another example of letting the inmates run the asylum. But I will be back on Friday, and that'll do it for this one. Take care, all. Have a good week. Peace.